If you drove through the suburbs of Fort Wayne, Indiana, you'd probably miss the Sanders house. It's just another boxy, beige-colored home with cracked concrete on the driveway, a sagging mailbox, and a porch light that flickers at night. To strangers, it looked like any other modest middle-class home. But for Joanna Sanders, that house became something else entirely. A place of joy once, then fear, and eventually, tragedy. This story doesn't start with a murder. It doesn't begin with sirens or blood on the floor. It starts with a woman, a young mother, and a boy she swore she would never lose. Joanna Sanders was 19 when she found out she was pregnant. She was a nursing student at Ivy Tech Community College, working nights at a gas station, trying to piece together a future she wasn't even sure she wanted. The father was a guy named Shane, gone by the time she said the word baby. No explanations. No goodbye. Just silence. Everyone told her she had options. That she was too young. That she'd ruin her future. But Joanna didn't listen. Or maybe she didn't care. She'd grown up in foster care, bounced around like a forgotten package. When she saw her baby on the ultrasound, something in her locked in. I'm going to do this right, she told herself. So she did. Or at least she tried. On June 22, 1993, she gave birth to a boy, Ethan Ray Sanders. He came into the world screaming, red-faced, fists clenched like he already had something to fight. He was small but healthy, beautiful even. Dark hair, chubby cheeks, long fingers like hers. And from the very first moment she held him, Joanna knew this child was her world. She didn't have much. A studio apartment near downtown, hand-me-down furniture, a pack-and-play from a church donation bin. But she gave Ethan everything she could: time, attention, love. Unfiltered, unconditional love. But love alone, as the years would show, wasn't enough. At 6 weeks old, Ethan got sick. It started with coughing, then fever, then labored breathing. Within hours, he was struggling to inhale, his chest rising and falling in a panicked rhythm that no newborn should ever experience. Doctors diagnosed him with RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, and pneumonia. It was serious, life-threatening. Joanna watched helplessly as her baby was airlifted to a hospital in Indianapolis. She wasn't allowed on the helicopter. She drove behind in a beat-up Buick, hands shaking on the wheel the entire way. She prayed the entire 3-hour drive. Please, just don't take him. Take anything else. Just not him. Miraculously, Ethan survived. It took 9 days in the pediatric ICU and several weeks of recovery, but he pulled through. And something changed in Joanna during that time. Something subtle but lasting. The fear of losing him, it never left. From that moment forward, her mindset shifted. If he wants it, he gets it. If he cries, I fix it. If he's unhappy, I failed. Some parents call it spoiling. Joanna called it love. Ethan grew into a toddler with an almost magnetic charm. He was quiet, curious, expressive. Neighbors would comment on how well-behaved he was. He liked stacking blocks, organizing things, watching cartoons on mute. He didn't laugh much, but when he did, it felt like sunlight. But there were signs. Subtle at first. He didn't like being touched unless he initiated it. He hated loud noises and bright lights. He lined up his toys in perfect rows and screamed if anyone moved them. And he never shared. Joanna dismissed these things. Called them quirks. He's just particular, she'd say. He's got a strong personality. She never asked a doctor. Never sought an evaluation. In her mind, labeling Ethan meant something was wrong with him. And to her, he was perfect. Always had been. By the time Ethan was 6, his quirks had turned into something else. Control. There's a story Joanna told during her one and only interview, years later. It was about a toy truck. They were at a department store, just a quick trip to grab groceries. But Ethan saw a shelf of bright, plastic trucks near the checkout. He asked for one. Joanna said no. We've got 3 at home already, honey. Without a word, Ethan picked up a truck and slammed it to the floor. And again, until it shattered. Then, without blinking, he pointed to another one and said, "Buy me that one or I'll break it too." The other shoppers stared. Some looked disgusted. Others, concerned. Joanna was mortified. But more than that, she was afraid. Not of Ethan's tantrum. Of his silence afterward. The calm stare he gave her. Like he knew exactly what he was doing. She bought him the truck. And paid for the broken one too. That night, Ethan didn't apologize. He didn't even mention it. But he smiled at her when she brought him ice cream. Like he knew. Like he'd won. These moments repeated. Not every day. Not dramatically. But consistently. If Ethan didn't get what he wanted, he'd lash out. If Joanna tried to say no, he'd break things. Scream. Sometimes even hit. But every time, every single time, she gave in. Because deep down, she was still that mother in the ICU, praying not to lose her baby. She couldn't see that the boy she saved was slowly becoming someone else. Someone darker. Someone capable of terrifying things. By the time Ethan was 10, Joanna wasn't parenting anymore. She was surviving. She couldn't date. Couldn't discipline. Couldn't even set bedtime without negotiation. Ethan ran the house. Quietly. Strategically. And that's where this story truly begins, not with blood, but with a boy who was once loved too much and never taught what love wasn't. People always assume that children grow into the rules we give them. That if you teach them right from wrong, they'll find their way. That discipline, structure, and love are enough to steer them clear of darkness. But what if the rules were never there to begin with? What if a child grew up believing the world was supposed to bend to him? For Ethan Sanders, that belief wasn't a phase. It became law. By the time Ethan was 10, Joanna Sanders had stopped pretending she was in control. She still cooked, still cleaned, still did the things mothers do. But inside the walls of their small Indiana home, the real authority was a boy with cold eyes and a quiet voice. A child who had never been told no and never accepted it when he was. There were no chores. No curfews. No consequences. Ethan ate when he wanted, stayed up as long as he pleased, and demanded specific brands of cereal or juice, and if they weren't there, he'd dump the groceries on the floor. Joanna didn't yell. She didn't hit. She simply cleaned up. Silently. It wasn't that she didn't care. She just didn't know how to fight anymore. And every time she looked at him, she saw that fragile baby in the ICU, wrapped in tubes and monitors, fighting to breathe. In her mind, Ethan was still that child. But Ethan had moved on. He was now something else entirely. When Ethan started middle school, things took a turn. Not dramatic, not sudden, but unmistakable. His teachers called Joanna. Often. He refuses to participate. He challenges every instruction. He's getting physically aggressive with other students. She nodded, apologized, promised to talk to him. But she never really did. Not in a way that mattered. There's one call she remembered clearly, one she replayed in her head for years. A substitute teacher had asked Ethan to put away a comic book during class. He stood up, walked to the front of the room, and ripped the book in half. Then he whispered something to the teacher that made her visibly pale. She wouldn't repeat the words, only said, it was threatening. Very personal. When Joanna asked Ethan about it, he shrugged. She touched my stuff. That was always the line. They touched my stuff. As if that alone justified anything. By the age of 12, Ethan stopped pretending to be part of any social structure. He didn't go to birthday parties. Didn't make friends. He walked the hallways of his school like a ghost, silent, observant, withdrawn. But if someone stepped into his space or said the wrong thing, he reacted instantly. Violently. Then cold again, like nothing had happened. The school recommended therapy. Multiple times. Joanna declined. Ethan's just sensitive, she said. He's different. Not broken. Even when she found him one night, sitting on the living room floor in complete darkness, holding a kitchen knife and just staring into space, she didn't panic. She didn't call for help. She asked if he wanted a snack. That year, Joanna met someone. His name was Craig Bell, a mechanical supervisor at a local plant. Divorced. Stable. He was quiet, firm, and didn't scare easily. And more importantly, he liked Joanna. He didn't run when she told him she had a teenage son with a strong will. Craig met Ethan in the living room. He extended a hand. Ethan didn't shake it. Just looked at it, then walked away. Craig chuckled. Tough crowd. Joanna smiled nervously. She hoped Ethan would come around. He didn't. After a few months, Craig moved in. He brought order, rules, expectations. And Ethan hated every second of it. Shoes off in the house. No electronics at the dinner table. Help clean up after yourself. To most, they were basic courtesies. To Ethan, they were war. The tension in the house tightened. Words became colder. Joanna tried to balance between the two, but she was exhausted, emotionally and physically. Caught between a man trying to build structure and a son who rejected it entirely. Then came Christmas. The day everything cracked wide open. Ethan had asked for a new gaming console. He circled it in a flyer. Mentioned it daily. Joanna saved for months to get it. Christmas morning, Ethan sprinted down the stairs, barefoot, still in pajamas, reaching for the box under the tree. But Craig blocked him. Breakfast first, he said calmly. Then presents. He sat Ethan at the table, placed a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him, and said, "Finish this, then you can open your gift." Ethan stared at the plate. Didn't move. Didn't eat. He sat there for 6 hours. Didn't say a word. Didn't touch the food. Didn't open a single gift. That night, he went to bed hungry and silent. Joanna found the console box still under the tree, untouched. The next day, Craig went to work. Joanna approached Ethan gently. Apologized. Told him he could open his gift now. He walked to the tree. Picked up the box. Opened it. Then, with dead calm, he took the console and smashed it into the floor. Over and over. Until it cracked, sparked, and broke apart completely. Joanna gasped. Ethan turned to her and said, "You let him ruin it." And then he went back upstairs. Later that week, Joanna bought another console. Because in her mind, that was love. Looking back, she'd later say, "I thought I could keep the peace by giving him what he wanted. I thought if I just gave enough, it would stop." But it didn't. It never did. Ethan learned that rage had power, and silence had more. For most people, love softens the edges. It makes us gentler, more patient, more forgiving. But for Ethan Sanders, love became another form of control. He met her when he was 17. Amber Ray was 2 years younger, a junior at Fort Wayne High, with an easy laugh and warm eyes. The kind of girl who made others feel safe just by being in the room. She wore secondhand cardigans, worked part-time at the local bakery, and dreamed of becoming a pediatric nurse. Ethan wasn't like her. Not even close. He didn't talk much. Didn't smile. But there was something about him. His quiet, almost eerie calm that intrigued Amber. At first, their relationship was uneventful. He walked her to school, waited for her after shifts, bought her a necklace from a claw machine, and told her he liked how she never asked too many questions. Amber mistook that for affection. What she didn't realize was Ethan didn't want a girlfriend. He wanted possession. 4 months into their relationship, Amber missed a period. She panicked. Took the test in the school restroom. 2 lines. Positive. She was 16. He was 18. They were still kids. But now, they had created one. Amber thought Ethan would freak out. She braced for it. But he didn't. Instead, he grinned, a strange, crooked grin, and said, "Good. Now you'll never leave." She laughed nervously, not understanding what he meant. But Joanna did. When Amber told Joanna the news, the woman didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stood there for a long moment, then opened her arms. "You can stay here," she said. "We'll make it work." It was the most maternal Joanna had felt in years. Amber moved in the following week. She brought a duffel bag and a drawer full of baby clothes. Ethan, for once, seemed happy. He helped decorate the nursery, talked about baby names, read parenting blogs at night. Joanna allowed herself to believe maybe this child would change him. For a while, it looked like it had. When the baby was born, Micah Sanders, 6 pounds, 4 ounces, Ethan was in the delivery room. He cut the cord, held his son, whispered something into his tiny ear. The nurses said he looked like any other proud young father. But Joanna noticed something else. He never smiled. Not genuinely. He looked at Micah like he was his creation, not a blessing, not a miracle, but something he now owned. In the early months, Ethan was helpful, attentive, almost obsessive. He changed diapers, heated bottles to precise temperatures, measured nap times with military precision. He told Amber, "You just focus on school. I've got him." And so she did. She went back to high school, took night classes, started working weekends again. Joanna, meanwhile, kept her distance. She didn't want to disrupt the fragile peace. But underneath the calm, something darker was brewing. Ethan began imposing rules. Not for the baby, for everyone else. Curtains had to stay closed. The lights bad for Micah's sleep. TV off after 8 p.m. He needs silence. No visitors. No phone calls. No interruptions. Amber couldn't go anywhere unless she texted first, and if she was more than 10 minutes late, Ethan would call over and over. Then yell when she got home. "You left him with me too long. You're his mother, not some little girl who gets to hang out after class." At first, Amber tried to reason with him. Then she tried to avoid him. Eventually, she stopped trying at all. Joanna noticed the bruises under Amber's eyes. Not from hits. From lack of sleep. She noticed how the girl flinched when Ethan entered the room. How she spoke less. Smiled less. How she clutched the baby tighter when Ethan paced the living room. And still, Joanna said nothing. Because she remembered how Ethan once held a broken plate to his own throat at age 11. Because she remembered the AK-47 he kept under his bed, just in case. And because she feared that if she spoke up, she'd be next. One night, while Amber was feeding Micah, she whispered to Joanna in the kitchen, "I think I have to leave." Joanna froze. "Do you want to take the baby with you?" she asked. Amber's lips trembled. "I don't know if I can. He'll lose it. He'll hurt someone. Maybe Micah. Maybe me." She started crying silently, shoulders shaking, face turned to the window. Joanna poured 2 cups of decaf and nodded. They never finished the conversation. But the tension boiled over soon enough. Amber was 18 now. Micah had just turned 2. On a Thursday afternoon, she left. No suitcase. No note. Just disappeared. She left the baby with Joanna. Joanna thought she was out shopping, until dinner came and she never returned. That night, Ethan came home and saw Amber's shoes missing from the doorway. He stood in silence for a full minute. Then opened all the curtains. Something he never did. He paced the room, mumbling, "I won't let some other man raise my son. I won't lose my family. I won't give him up." Joanna didn't respond. She just watched from the hallway. She didn't know it yet, but that was the last night their home would ever be whole again. It was Friday, September 9th. The kind of late summer day in Indiana where the wind feels heavier than usual, where sunlight seems to linger too long in places it doesn't belong. Inside the Sanders home, the curtains were still open. That, by itself, was strange. But what happened behind those windows was something no one in that neighborhood would ever forget. Joanna Sanders had been gone most of the day. She'd started attending meetings again. Alcoholics Anonymous. She was trying to piece herself back together, piece by piece, one meeting at a time. Her drinking had gotten worse after Micah was born, and worse still after Amber moved in. Now that Amber was gone, she was fighting back the only way she knew how. When she pulled into the driveway that evening, the first thing she noticed was Amber's car. Parked exactly where it always had been, in the left-hand spot by the trash bins. Joanna's stomach turned. Amber had been gone for 2 days. No texts. No calls. She'd left Micah behind and said nothing. So why was her car back? She stepped out slowly. The air felt too still. The sun was already dipping, casting long shadows across the yard. The porch light was off. The front door slightly ajar. Inside, the house was quiet. No cartoons playing. No baby babble. No dishes clinking. Just stillness. And then she saw it. A dark trail on the floor. Leading from the hallway into the kitchen. Blood. Joanna froze. For a second, her mind went numb. She convinced herself it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe he broke a mirror, she whispered. Maybe he cut his hand. That's all. But the trail didn't stop at the kitchen. It continued. Down the hallway. Toward the bathroom. Her feet moved before she could stop them. Each step felt heavier. Each breath shallower. The door was closed. But underneath, a thick, glistening pool of red had seeped through the bottom. And the metallic smell, raw, sour, hit her like a wall. She pushed the door open. And the world collapsed. Amber was in the tub, fully clothed. Her throat cut so deep it almost looked unreal. There were multiple stab wounds across her back, defensive cuts on her arms and hands. It wasn't rage. It was precision. Joanna couldn't scream, couldn't run. Her legs locked, her throat dry, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes were telling her. Amber Ray, the girl who used to hum lullabies at night, the girl who brought color back into that house, was dead. And her killer was gone. Joanna's first thought wasn't for herself. It was for Micah. She ran through the house, calling his name. Micah? Baby? Where are you? No answer. No toddler footsteps. No cries. She tore through the bedrooms, the closets, the backyard. Nothing. Then came the second thought. The only one more terrifying than finding Amber like that. He took him. She dialed 911. The dispatcher tried to keep her calm, but Joanna was spiraling. She told them everything, Amber, the blood, the child, the fear that Ethan had snapped. He said he wouldn't let anyone else raise him, she sobbed. He said he'd never give him up. Never. Within minutes, the house was swarmed with flashing lights and officers in latex gloves. Crime scene tapes stretched across the front lawn. Neighbors stood on porches, whispering. Reporters showed up by 8:30. But Ethan and Micah were nowhere to be found. An Amber Alert was issued by midnight. Photos of Ethan Sanders and his 2-year-old son plastered every screen in the state. The media called him unstable, dangerous, armed. But Joanna knew better. Ethan wasn't unstable. He was calm, calculated, deliberate. The search went statewide. Tips. Surveillance footage from gas stations. Nothing. Until 5:03 a.m. the next day. A motel clerk just off I-69 in Angola called dispatch. He'd seen the alert. A young man checked in earlier with a toddler. Paid in cash. Didn't give a last name. Room 107. SWAT arrived quietly. Guns drawn. Ready for the worst. But before they could even knock, the door opened. Ethan stood there. Hands up. Face blank. He said nothing. Just nodded once and surrendered. Inside the room, Micah sat on the bed. Unharmed. Confused. Holding a half-eaten cereal bar. At the station, Ethan asked for his phone call. He dialed one number. Joanna's. She picked up on the first ring. There was silence for a moment. Then his voice. I didn't mean to. I lost it. I couldn't stop. Joanna whispered his name. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. For everything. For what I did to her. I thought she was leaving with someone else. I thought she'd take him. The pause. I need you to take care of him. Please. Tell him I loved him. Then he hung up. The forensics were undeniable. Amber's blood was in Ethan's car, on his shoes, beneath his fingernails. The murder weapon, a hunting knife from Joanna's kitchen, was found in the motel bathroom. The autopsy confirmed what they already knew. She'd been stabbed in the back. Throat slashed. She'd fought back. But it wasn't enough. Ethan Sanders was charged with first-degree murder and kidnapping. He pled guilty in a deal to avoid life without parole. His sentence, 40 years to life. Eligible for parole in 2052. Micah was placed in Joanna's custody. The second chance, she said. But the house was never lived in again. Joanna packed up and left Fort Wayne within the month. Changed her number. Cut ties with the press. She gave one interview for a documentary 2 years later, and that was it. In it, she said something that stuck with viewers. I raised a boy I was too afraid to discipline. And now I'm raising a boy who has to grow up without a mother. When a door closes, sometimes it doesn't just lock behind you. Sometimes, it follows you. In your head. In your sleep. In the way your voice cracks when you say the name of someone who's gone. For Joanna Sanders, The front door of that house in Fort Wayne never really closed. She walked out with a duffel bag, a toddler on her hip, and a worn photo of Amber folded in her wallet. But what she carried with her weighed far more than that. After the trial, the media moved on. Another true crime headline buried beneath the next tragedy. Another courtroom sketch filed away in the archives. But for Joanna, the real sentence began when Ethan's ended. He had a cell. She had the memories. Ethan Sanders was booked into Allen County Jail the night after his arrest. The guards noted how quiet he was. Not crying. Not protesting. He answered questions in short, flat tones. Never asked about bail. Just one question to the intake officer. Will they let my mom keep Micah? He was placed in protective custody. Not for his own safety, but because no one knew what he might do to someone else. Or himself. Joanna visited him once before the trial. Behind a thick glass divider, he looked almost like a stranger. The same boy she raised. But the eyes were older. Heavier. He picked up the phone. She picked up hers. You look tired, he said. Joanna didn't answer. He's okay, right? Micah? She nodded. Then Ethan did something that startled her. He smiled. Then I did the right thing. She was going to take him. She was going to give him to someone else. Joanna hung up without another word. She didn't return for any more visits. In court, Ethan initially pled not guilty. His defense attorney tried to angle diminished capacity. They brought in a psychologist who mentioned early signs of behavioral disorder, obsessive tendencies, lack of proper boundaries as a child. The prosecutor called it for what it was, cold-blooded murder. The jury never had to decide. A plea deal was offered. Ethan Sanders pled guilty to intentional homicide and parental kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. He was 19. The earliest he could see the outside world again legally would be at 59. But prison didn't contain him completely. 2 years into his sentence, Ethan attempted to hire a fellow inmate to murder a man he believed Amber had been seeing. There was no evidence the man even existed. Ethan fabricated details, paid the would-be hitman $4,300 through a relative on the outside. The plan failed. The hitman turned informant. Ethan was slapped with solicitation of murder charges and placed into solitary confinement. Meanwhile, Micah was learning to speak, to walk, to forget. He called Joanna Nana, though no one had told him to. He never asked for his father, at least not in words. But sometimes he'd stand by the hallway at night and point toward the bathroom door. The one Joanna never opened again. Joanna tried to rebuild. She sold the house, fast and cheap. Moved 2 counties away, rented a small 1-bedroom with enough space for Micah's crib and a fold-out couch. She worked nights at a retirement facility. Daytime was for Micah. And coffee. And silence. She didn't give interviews. Except one. In 2017, 5 years after the murder, a documentary crew from a true crime series came calling. At first, she refused. Then, late one night, after Micah had gone to sleep, she opened the old family photo album and stared at a picture of Ethan at 6 years old, holding a toy truck, the kind he used to destroy when he didn't get his way. She called the producers the next morning. In the interview, Joanna looked older than her age. Deep lines across her forehead. Voice slightly hoarse. Hands fidgeting in her lap. I wasn't afraid of my son when he was little, she said. I was afraid of losing him. So I let him lead. And when I finally tried to step in, it was too late. He didn't know how to hear no from anyone. Not even from the girl who loved him. When the interviewer asked if she ever visited Ethan in prison, she shook her head. He took something from all of us. Not just Amber. He took peace. He took mornings. He took the sound of a house where people used to laugh. Micah is 10 now. He plays soccer. Likes dinosaurs. Hates carrots. He still lives with Joanna. Every birthday, he gets 2 cakes. 1 chocolate, 1 vanilla. Amber liked vanilla. He doesn't know all the details. Not yet. But one day, he'll ask. And when he does, Joanna says, I won't lie. But I won't let it be the only story he knows about where he came from. Some say Ethan was a product of failed parenting. Others say he was born broken. But one thing is certain. In that quiet Indiana home, long before blood was spilled, a monster was made, not in rage, but in silence. They started arriving 3 months after sentencing. Plain white envelopes. Always handwritten. Always from the same place, Wabash Valley Correctional Facility. Joanna never asked for them. But she never threw them away either. They came once a month. Then once every 3. Then only on Micah's birthday. The first letter was only 2 pages long. Ethan wrote in neat, controlled cursive, almost like he was afraid of wasting space. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I don't think I was ever okay. I think I knew that even when I was little, the world always felt too loud, too bright. People moved wrong, said too much, or not enough. But with Micah, things felt quiet. Like maybe I finally got something right. Then I got scared again. Like always. And I did what I always do when I'm scared. I ruined it. He didn't mention Amber's name. Not once. Joanna read that letter alone in her car outside a grocery store. She sat in the parking lot for almost an hour, staring at her hands, the steering wheel, the sky, anything but the page. She didn't cry. Not then. She just folded the letter once, twice, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it under the passenger seat. It stayed there for 6 weeks before she brought it inside. The second letter was longer. Angrier. You said I never had structure. You said you were too soft on me. But you never asked what I needed. You gave me everything except rules. Except certainty. I didn't want toys, Mom. I wanted to know what was real. And by the time someone tried to teach me, I hated them for it. Maybe that's your fault. Maybe it's mine. Maybe it doesn't matter anymore. He ended with, tell Micah I hope he's better than me. Tell him I tried. Joanna never told Micah about the letters. Not when he was 4. Not when he was 6. But one night when he was 8 he asked, did my dad love me? Joanna paused. Then answered the only way she knew how. He loved you the only way he knew how. But that wasn't enough. Micah didn't ask again for a long time. By the 3rd year, the letters started including sketches. Ethan had started drawing in prison. Mostly geometric shapes at first. Then prison yard scenes. A bench. A basketball hoop. A guard tower in the distance. Then one day, Joanna opened an envelope to find a crayon drawing of a house. Simple, but unmistakably theirs. The porch light. The cracked sidewalk. Even the old doghouse Lucy used to sleep in. At the bottom, in shaky pencil he wrote, I don't dream about prison. I only dream about home. The way it was before everything got cold. Some nights, Joanna would sit at the kitchen table after Micah went to bed. She'd lay the letters out like a trail, reading them in order, trying to find a map, a meaning, a shift in tone that meant he was healing. But there was no map, just fragments, loops, patterns that came and went. One letter would be gentle, the next accusatory. One week he blamed himself, the next he blamed the world, or Joanna, or Amber's ghost. It was like watching a man talk to his own reflection and lose the argument. When Ethan turned 25, the letters stopped. No warning, no goodbye, just silence. Joanna waited 3 months, then 6. She called the prison once, asked if he was okay. He's alive, the voice on the line said, but he's not talking to anyone. That night, she sat on the floor of the laundry room and reread every letter he'd ever sent. It took 4 hours. And for the first time, she let herself say it aloud. My son's never coming back. Micah found the letters one day when he was 10. Joanna had kept them in a shoebox, buried behind old tax returns and expired documents. He didn't open any, just stared at the handwriting on the envelopes. Are these from him? Joanna nodded. Can I read them? Not yet, she said. But one day, when you can understand what it means to love someone and fear them at the same time. Micah didn't argue. He just put the box back, gently, and closed the cabinet door. There are prisons made of steel and concrete. And there are prisons made of memory. Ethan was locked in one. But so was Joanna. Every birthday, she still baked Micah 2 cakes. Every spring, she changed her number, just in case someone from the media tried again. And every once in a while, she walked past a boy in a hoodie with dark eyes, and her heart stopped for half a second. Not because she thought it was him, but because part of her still expected it to be. Some stories end with a trial, some with a verdict, some with a funeral. But this one didn't. This story ended in the silence after. The kind that doesn't make headlines. The kind that lives in hallway shadows, in closed doors, in the eyes of a child who knows something is wrong, but doesn't have the words for it yet. Micah Sanders is 12 now. He's taller, more curious, smarter than he lets on. He doesn't ask about his father anymore. But Joanna knows that doesn't mean he's forgotten. Because trauma doesn't always come in the form of memories. Sometimes, it shows up in how you check a locked door twice before bed. Or how your shoulders flinch when someone raises their voice. Micah carries those echoes. Quietly. Every once in a while, Joanna takes out the letters again. Not to reread them. She knows every word by heart. But to remind herself that none of this was imagined. That what happened, happened. There's one letter she never showed anyone. One Ethan sent during his 4th year inside. You once asked me what I wanted to be when I was little. I didn't know how to answer then. But I do now. I wanted to be someone you weren't afraid of. She read that line 5 times before folding the page. Then she locked it away for good. People sometimes ask Joanna why she stayed. Why she let Amber live under the same roof. Why she didn't see the signs sooner. She never gives them what they want. Because the truth is messy. It doesn't fit into a headline. It doesn't satisfy a stranger's curiosity. Here's what she will say. I didn't raise a killer. I raised a boy who never learned how to be told no. And then the world told him no, hard and fast. And he broke. They moved again last year. Different county. New school. New neighbors who don't know the name Ethan Sanders. Who just see a grandmother and her grandson with matching brown eyes and quiet habits. Joanna works at the town library now. She shelves books in the mornings and reads to 1st graders on Thursdays. She tells herself this is peace. Some days it even feels like it, but peace is fragile. Once, while walking Micah home from school, a classmate called out, Hey, isn't your dad the guy who killed? Joanna didn't hear the rest. She didn't need to. Micah didn't flinch, didn't stop walking. He just kept his head down and kept moving. That night he asked her, Is there a way to forget something without pretending it didn't happen? Joanna didn't answer right away. Then she said, You don't forget. You carry it. And if you're lucky, it doesn't crush you. Ethan still writes sometimes. Shorter now. Less structured. One-liners. Half-thoughts. Fragments. One arrived last December. No return address. No signature. Just 5 words. I hope he's okay now. Joanna didn't reply. But she left it on the counter for a week before filing it away. So how does a story like this end? Not with forgiveness. Not with vengeance. Not with a perfectly tied bow. It ends in the quiet decision to live anyway. Micah turns 13 this fall. Joanna plans to give him the box then, the one with all the letters. He asked for it last year. She said not yet. But now maybe he's ready. He'll read them alone, in his own time. And what he does with them, what he chooses to believe about the boy who wrote them, that part is out of her hands. And maybe that's what parenting really is, in the end. Letting go of the version of the story you wanted to tell. And living with the one that happened.